I have been procrastinating on this video for about 8 months now, simply because I actually did complete it 8 months ago, but then the FNAF movie came out, as well as Ruin and Help Wanted, and that just messed up everything for me. Also, the Into the Pit game is coming out, which I actually do not care about, honestly. Luckily though, it did answer a few questions I had, well, sort of, I guess. We'll get there when we get there. But one of the first mysteries I need to solve for you guys even before we start the timeline is the matter of what is real and what is not. I believe the gameplay of the first 7 games, excluding FNAF World, but more on that much later, are real. This might seem obvious, but the reason I mention this, and for some reason everyone loves just giving me the hardest time on this even for mentioning it, but for the longest time I thought the gameplay was fake. Because in the beginning of Help Wanted, the first one, Fazbear Entertainment mentions this.
We know that Fazbear Entertainment has developed something of a bad reputation over the last few decades, and while it's true that some stories associated with our name were loosely based on actual events, the majority of them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic. Lawsuits pending. But we aren't above laughing at ourselves. Ha ha ha.
Now, this can go 2 different ways. Either 1, they are lying to cover up their own mistakes and everything did happen, or 2, the so-called lunatic did make fake games based on true events. Even though I would like to think number 2 is real, it just wouldn't add up in the timeline. But at the same time, number 1 wouldn't make much sense either. You know, at this point, Scott has lost all of his actual good storytelling abilities, so I'm not surprised that both of these are actually fake. But now, let's assume number 1 is real. Trust me, I have tried playing around and making internet fires on Reddit due to that theory alone. Speaking of Reddit, this would actually not have been fully possible without Reddit. Post on there, which will be in the description of this video, where I asked many people about mysteries to solve in the timeline. I actually tried answering everyone's questions about their mysteries. Keep in mind that some of these mysteries will be controversial, and I will provide as much evidence as I can to my claims. So all I ask is that you just try to see my perspective, and if you see something I missed, please feel free to tell me in the comments, but please don't immediately just go angry just because I missed something. And yes, I am aware that the Into the Pit game is coming out later this year, and most likely it'll come out when I'm in the middle of this project, so just keep in mind that if Into the Pit debunks any of my facts or theories, that I wrote this out and researched it before it came out. Okay? Okay. So yeah, as I said, if you want to comment down to me that I missed something, just say it like that. Don't just automatically get angry at me for no reason. Just give a reason for it. So, with all that out of the way, let's begin with the timeline. Our story starts somewhere in the mid-70s. The reason I say this is because since we don't know how old William is, we can assume he was in his late 20s when starting the restaurant chain. Also, assuming he went to college for management or something like that, will also include both him and Henry, that they're perhaps married and have children at this time, making it confirmed that they have to be at least 20 around this time in the mid-70s. To be fair though, when considering William's ability to run a business all by himself and having a young son around this time, well, I mean, even though William gets people to help him out later, at the beginning he literally had to run by himself most likely. And yeah, there's also pictures of Henry with facial hair. So with all of this information, with William running the restaurant, the first restaurant, pretty much all by himself, and having a son at this time, Henry having facial hair, and both of them most likely being married still, we can most likely assume they're close to the same age. But based on this, it will probably be safer to say that they're both in their late or mid-30s by 1983. Obviously, there isn't much proof to that, but it's all I got, unless you guys have some confirmation to help with William's age. So, let's say William was born in the late 1940s, and I feel like William was inspired by circus shows, judging by the hidden poster and security breach of a black and white show that cost 50 cents to enter. There is no way in modern day, or even the 70s for that matter, that a show plus food and drink would cost 50 cents. Therefore, this must have been popular in most likely the early 50s, perhaps late 40s, but that would be a bit of a stretch, bringing it closer to when William would watch this when he was probably about 10 years old. Also, the fact that this show would have had to exist when William was young and would have to be around the 50s or so, because or else William would be an elderly man. And yes, I know he's portrayed like an elderly man in the movie, but he is portrayed as a young man in the novels, and yet both are not canon. I also know Scott would probably not think of this, but the fact that the show is so cheap and showing that mascots and animatronics appear to be revolutionary in this era makes me think William grew in a poverty-stricken area. Lucky for us, we have a location. It's been confirmed a few times that the pizzeria from FNAF 6 at least took place in Hurricane, Utah, and since this will be the second location, more on that way later on, but take my word for it right now, it's assumed that without much money, William would have to keep these two pizzerias close together, leading them both to most likely be located in Hurricane, Utah. I went a little deeper though. Attached in the description is a link of poverty rates from the real Hurricane, Utah, and what do you know, but they have a bit of a poverty record in the past. There are way more places worse than it, but it does have a suburban sort of place, but their poverty level might have been way bigger in the 50s. Anyone who has info on this, or if you live in Utah, please let me know, because this is not a solid confirmed fact, but I thought it was interesting to include. Back to our prologue of a complicated story, William Afton and Henry Emily as well were both inspired by these circus performances that they wanted to make something of their own. Keep in mind that the year is somewhere in the mid-70s when they are both in their close to mid-30s, and William and Henry don't know each other yet. William decides to make robot mascots but didn't know how to make them, so the closest thing he could make were mascot costumes most possibly made of fabric or something of that sort, and just simply made pizza for a start. His two mascots were named Fredbear after the singing bear, and William made him yellow just to stand out, and Spring Bonnie, which was a yellow rabbit of his own design. What was this location called? Well, he decided to call it Fredbear's Family Diner, naming it after the bear that inspired him. Now, there is speculation regarding this, because he would make a bigger location named this later, but we don't have any evidence of what he could have called this small pizza shop, so he probably called it Fredbear's Family Diner. The reason I don't say he made the Springlock suits yet was because according to some of the scrapped and unused fast facts from AR Special Delivery, one of the facts says the following: some of the first animatronics built by William Afton featured claw mechanisms that were able to hide away items inside of them. Now, this does say some of the first and mentions the Funtime designs, but it also has facts in here lying saying William built all the animatronics when it was obviously Henry. Basically, it's a common lying trope to make William look better after future events. Does this confirm he didn't make the Springlock suits himself? No. But using this possible lying scheme, and also including the fact that William was most likely poor, this was probably the best he could do. Also, in case you are wondering, yes, I am including these scrapped facts, simply because most of the facts are confirmed anyway, so it's left to assume that these are canon, but since AR was getting shut down in real life, it's also left to assume Scott didn't have time to add them. So, William is doing financially okay, but not getting many customers. He just so happens to hear about this new place that opened up called Chica's Pizza World. Reason being is because MatPat made some pretty solid theories on Chica being one of Henry's designs, and also it would apply to why Chica has a location named after herself, while the others like Foxy and Bonnie don't. The closest they have is a separate stage depending on the location. But at this time, and in the next possible 2 decades, the only time a location is named after someone is if they are the head performer or mascot. To add on to the Chica theory, her "I was the first" line from Ultimate Custom Night could apply that she was the first victim, but also she might have been the first original Freddy character created, not counting Golden Freddy / Fredbear of course. Alongside Chica are the mediocre melodies, and based on all their designs it could seem that it was a farm-themed place since most of the characters are farm animals that would do a music show, kinda like the Country Bears, a real-life animatronic singing group in Disney World. Oh, and then Ned Bear was added there too, possibly due to, just like William, Henry wanted to keep this bear trend going. Simple as that. However, if the audience didn't want to watch a singing bear and chicken, there would be 2 separate stages attached. One being a magic act with Orville the elephant and a storytime stage with Mr. Hippo. This one was probably used to either get kids to sleep or just have some interesting stories for adults while their kids watch the band or something like that. There was one other thing that interested me with these guys though, and that's the fact that since the mediocre melodies become deactivated later, one big mystery is what is this box that is attached to them. It appears to be a power box of some kind, and doing my research, the closest thing I could compare it to was from the 70s, was a power module. I will pull one up on the screen now. Obviously, each one is missing a few wires and such, but I think you get the point. The FNAF wiki says it's an electrical power source box, which is a real thing, and what I was able to find, it kind of does look like it. So which one is it? Perhaps they can be the same device. I mean, another name for an electric source box is an electric grid after all, so that's my result. It's a power module with some vintage wiring of a source box. Does that make any sense? Anyway, even if it doesn't, let's move on. Hey, and also, when I said I would solve all the mysteries, I meant that. I meant that I would solve every single dang mystery. And if I miss some, then I will make a whole nother video after this timeline's over to just do those mysteries. Okay, so then if Henry had all this set up and people would rather come here than a small pizza shop with 2 yellow mascot costumes, what happened to the location? I'll tell you what happened. It simply just shut down. Henry has shown quite a few times that he probably doesn't have good managing skills. I forgot where he says this, but even in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, the fact that he didn't manage any of the cash himself kind of shows something. After seeing the place shut down, I feel like William might have been a bit jealous, but in all honesty, I don't think William was a truly evil person until sometime later on. But in any case, he sees his business isn't getting people, and Henry's business is good. But Henry can't keep the place open because it isn't producing enough money to keep the animatronics working. William puts 2 and 2 together and thinks, we could probably make something extraordinary if we worked together. So they shook hands and started to brainstorm. William figured out that they would have to make a lot of income first if they wanted to add a lot of animatronics to their franchise in the making. Oh, and just in case you are wondering, Henry puts the mediocre melodies in storage for a few decades. After William finds out that they need to make something grand while staying within a small budget, he remembered an old idea he had. That what if they could make a mascot costume, but make it simultaneously work as an animatronic? Because then that way, it would limit the idea of getting way too many animatronics where you can't pay for anything, but it also brings up the believability and gives something that audiences have never seen before. So Henry liked this idea and got to work. While Henry was working, I don't know if William closed the business for a little while and then staged a grand reopening, but I'd like to believe he did because this would save money, but it will also give off a big hype to all the people looking for something new and grand. Soon enough, Henry finished the designs. They find 2 guys to wear the costumes. I doubt it was actually William and Henry because they need to run the place. And then they opened their doors to the public. It appeared to be a huge success. As I said, they were probably poor before this, and there were many people who were interested in this place, but, it was too small of a place. So what did they do to get they had to get a bigger place somehow because, it's a very small location, and eventually the whole place is going to be crowded and people are going to be waiting in line just to get in. So what'd they do? Well, they kept their place open, and simultaneously William bought a bigger building, coincidentally, right near his house. Henry helped William just by getting some of his old stuff from storage from his previous location, like some tables, balloons, and a small stage. He even brought some of his spare parts for a parts and service room. While that was being finished and set up, they announced they were closing down the old restaurant and moving to the bigger one. Also, before any of you start to say, wait, Complex Liv, you forgot to talk about the Stage 01 minigame. Don't worry, I didn't forget, but this surprisingly takes place way much later. They opened the new place and it's going, pretty successfully. I didn't elaborate on this earlier, but as I said, William's house was only a walking distance from the location, and his family consisted of his wife, who doesn't have a confirmed name, but I'll just call her Mrs. Afton, his oldest son Michael, his youngest son Evan, and his daughter Elizabeth. One other thing I want to make clear is many will get mad at me for calling the crying child Evan, but it has been heavily theorized from the security logbook, and that's the case, and I honestly do believe it. There are a few in-depth explanations regarding this, just look those up later. And I'm just going to keep calling him Evan for the rest of this timeline, simply because that would be way easier than calling him the crying child repeatedly. Alright, so the year now is about 1982, and so far at least a year and a half, the 2 men have been running this business. They decide they want to make a new location because people are starting to get bored of the old animatronic suits. And also, William and Henry just want to make something else of their lives. So they decide to tease a new location called Fredbear and Friends, and they do this with an animated Scooby-Doo inspired short series with 4 episodes called Fredbear and Friends on Tour. Here they confirmed the 4 new animatronics that audiences would grow to love. And it was set to release in 1983, basically a year after the locations starting to get, well, waning in popularity. In no time, the shorts come out, and William and Henry make the new pizzeria, and contain not only a main singing stage with a band consisting of Fredbear, Spring Bonnie, Freddie, Bonnie, and Chica, but also a side stage called Pirate's Cove that contained an exclusive pirate show with Foxy. They also got a few day shift guards and night shift guards, along with someone who would grow to be one of, if not their most dedicated worker, Fred Smith, otherwise known as Phone Guy. I'll explain some proof for that later on, but we don't actually see this new location in any of the games, but we are shown it in the comic version of Into the Pit. Also, regarding Chica, I'm not sure why William wanted Chica instead of the other mediocre melodies, probably because I don't know, maybe Chica didn't run on a power box or something. I'm really not certain about that, sadly, but that's why I'm just guessing. After this pizzeria opens, they start getting out merch and toys and so on, worth of stuff that all the kids are playing with nowadays. But then there's the toy plushes. This confused me because the toy animatronics shouldn't exist yet. But then it just dawned on me. Marketing ploys. Perhaps this was their way of showing what their next era of animatronics would be if they go on this route. Think about it. And also look at them. Toy Freddy doesn't look a thing like he does in FNAF 2. And Chica obviously has her beak cut off. And yes, I am aware that in a GT Live livestream, Scott said that Chica's beak connected to lore, but that is utter bullcrap at this point, so I'm not going to even mention this. So, this makes me consider that they just put a little spin on the now new animatronic band, giving a visual display on what they could look like. Does that make any sense? Because, basically it's just a hype maneuver to get people hyped up for the new stuff. Even the Spring Bonnie plush looks like and behaves like Plush Trap, once again being more of a future marketing plug. Because this even shouldn't be a thing of a finger trap. So either that or this child just dropped this plush in the mud one too many times. So just to recap, the locations are in Hurricane, Utah. William started his own business, which was greatly marketed, but didn't get many customers, while Henry was the complete opposite, where he had a lot of customers but couldn't manage his establishment. William and Henry merged to make one restaurant, which does exponentially well. What happens after this restaurant, though? Well, 2 big things. From both of these locations, it's obvious that the people didn't come for the pizza, but instead they came for the animatronics. This should be obvious considering the time frame, but William gets a bit jealous in the process, because Henry was the creator, and of course, he got the credit. That fast fact I mentioned earlier said one of the first animatronics William made had claw mechanisms that were able to hide things inside of them, and so to prove himself, William managed the locations but also bought a hidden secret laboratory somehow. I know this because we'll see later on in Packed Up by Tales from the Pizzaplex story, which I forget what that story is, but I'll elaborate more on that in the next part, that the gameplay of FNAF 4 and sister location take place in an entirely different house and not Williams. And so, okay, so does this all make sense? So right at this time, we're in the middle of about 1983. And what happens is they start with their old business, which was Fredbear's Family Diner, and then Henry made Chica's Party World. Chica's Party World shut down, and then he was forced to go bankrupt and put all the stuff in storage. William's business was still doing financially okay, just not getting much customers with his own mascot costumes and everything. He partners up with Henry. They make the Springlock suits by reopening the location for Fredbear's. And then what William does is he then realizes that it's doing exponentially well, but the location is too small, so they close it, move it to another location. They most likely close down that very first location, so now it's just a huge building. And then they decided to try and make some new animatronics after a year of people watching it, most likely getting bored of the whole same old Springlock suit thing. So they decided to put out some shorts and some merch to hype up the new locations, and eventually they made Fredbear and Friends, which was the first introduction of Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, and then Chica returned, along with Spring Bonnie and Fredbear being in the mix. And then William, as we will see in the next part, decides to make this secret laboratory in this whole other house to try to, basically get better than Henry at making stuff. But we will see that in a later installment. But right now, this was the part 1 of the FNAF timeline where I'm trying to solve all the mysteries. I hope you enjoyed this. And I don't know when part 2 will be up, but hopefully soon. Also, a shameless plug, I just want to get this out of the way. I have a subreddit now, that'll be in links in the description. There's not really much on it, but if you want to, you can say basically anything on it. You can, tell me ideas, you can tell me just random stuff, send artwork, let's see, requests, you can do a lot of different things. So anyway, I just wanted to put that aside, and I hope that you have a good day. And I will see you in part 2, which I don't know when that's going to be uploaded, but there's going to be a few other things in between episodes I'll probably post. But anyway, stay tuned for part 2, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Bye-bye. Hey, so I'm post-editing this right now, and I realize I made a bit of a mistake. Because if you look in William's house, where the crying child is, and you look at the TV for long enough, it'll tell you 1983 and show you pictures of a show called Fredbear and Friends, which appears, as I said, to be the second location after Fredbear's Family Diner. Now, I was originally thinking that this would be telling us that it is the year 1983 that it is built, and that, the whole thing that the crying child's going to is Fredbear and Friends, or at least is built now and the year is 1983. Well, tell me this, why would a television advertisement say the year that you're in? Now, the only reason they would do that would be something like the news or something like that, but this isn't the news. This is an advertisement for a whole new place. So if the year is 1983 at the time of the bite, then why would the television be saying that exact same year for no reason? So this leads me to believe that, as I said, the year was about 1982 where a lot of other stuff happened. So what if the bite didn't happen in 1983? The bite happened in 1982.